Hello, welcome to another edition of Low-Code Campfire. This is the edition for August 11, 2023, episode number 110. So I am your host, Dale Warner. This is an event we do every Friday at this hour where we get together, talk about low-code in general, plant an app in specific, and maybe work on some issues or problems that you're encountering with the software. But glad you're here. It's an all skill levels welcome event. We record all these, put them out on YouTube. So this is youtube.com/plantanap. You'll find this plus our other recordings out there, but do subscribe and hit the alarm bell for those. We run a flexible agenda. We say hello and welcome anyone new to the campfire. And then we always start with first call. We get into some of these other areas. And then if there's interest, in about an hour, we'll go into the afterglow segment where we turn off the recording, raise a virtual beverage, and chat a little bit more. But do engage with us. It's a meeting format, so just come off of mute and say hello. We do ask that you mute if you have noise behind you. Other than that, be nice to each other. We have a QR code here that will send you to a nice Google form where you can tell us any questions or topics you'd like us to cover in advance. We haven't had one of those in a month or two, so we're a little bit free form today. With that, I will say hello, welcome.
Hi, everybody.
Good morning. Ben, I didn't feel like leaving you as the only person on video other than Dale, so.
You're so
Thank
good.
you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Well, we jump right into it. Anyone have a first call item?
If no one else does, I do.
Please.
I am trying to create this, not specifically plant an app, but maybe someone has done something similar. But I'm trying to create a calendar event registration type of application. And I'm still unfortunately running on 118, so I can't get the calendar portion of it. So I'm just using regular action grid. But one of the requests that I was given for this was to be able to create on the email that goes out a link similar to like the Zoom that goes out for the reminder, where it has an ICS for Outlook and a Google and a Yahoo adds a calendar link. And my question is, has anyone ever done that and have details on how to create the ICS file or a tool or anything to make life a little easier?
I'm being quiet for a second to see if anybody else jumps in. I think I can find something that Patrick has done and we can take a look at it. So when you sign up for office hours, I know that you do get that. Let's see if I can find my way in here. No, I'm going to be in trouble. Can't find my way into this account.
Dale has lost his powers.
That's right. Oh, all right. So it's going to be pretty boring watching me try and find my way in, but Ben, I will find that. This is going to be iCal links. So I'll find and do that immediately after our session today.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Just
Sure.
out of curiosity, though, on the action grid, I had mentioned how I'm running on 118 and I'm using it as a regular grid. I did notice that there is a calendar template,
Mhm.
but I can't get it to work. Is that because in that version of 118, it's just not functional and it's functional later?
I don't recall specifically with 118. The calendar has always been a little bit hard for me to configure. So I don't know, but it definitely got better in later versions. And I'm trying to remember if I think I even have one of these, a calendar display. Yep. So we have a calendar listing, and yeah, it definitely got much better with the way it looks and acts in the BS5, which didn't happen until after 19 and after, and it's certainly matured. So yeah.
Okay. I was just curious because I mean, it displays, but then when I try to set it up and put in the fields or whatever, nothing shows up. I could never get data in the calendar. I could display a blank calendar. That was easy, but I could never figure out how to put the data in. So I wasn't sure if it was just that maybe in that version, it just wasn't fully
I think it's
functional yet.
cantankerous, but I think it probably could work. I just, you know, haven't looked at 118 in a long time. I'm sorry about that, but I'll get you the other. Just for fun, if you were to sign up for office hours, actually, we could probably do this. Academy. So we have this live help thing. And you have to log in to sign up. The problem is I'm a super user in these, so it won't let me sign up with my normal account. But for you, if you do this and sign up, you can cancel later or ignore it if you don't have to go. But you'll get an email back from us that'll have the iCal stuff that you can click on. So you'll see what you're going to get from this if you want to go ahead and sign up for one. Cool.
Might be a good idea, Ben, to sign up for it and then actually go and have the topic be iCal.
Exactly. And you'll get me. Patrick is at an undisclosed location taking some time off. And so I'll be hosting that on Tuesday. Cool. What's next?
So I have one actually that's been a bit of a plague. If you don't mind, it's probably if you recall, Dale, I had submitted a question about getting a 500 error. And when I was submitting a form, the form just kind of hung there, did nothing. I thought I had it figured out as to why, but I don't think that was the case. So if possible, I'd like to just kind of show you what I'm up to and an example of how to make it happen and then how to make it not happen on something I think is very straightforward. So if possible, if I could share my screen, that would be great.
Please take it away.
All right. Okay, so this is a very simple application where what I want to do is edit these users and change a bunch of things about the user. So this diagnostics, all it does is supposed to just display an error message. And you can see here, this is it displays it as expected.
Mhm.
So now if I go in and edit that form, oops, sorry, wrong one. I go in and edit this form, and all I do is I turn on causes validation, save it. Now I go in and try that again with validation on. You see I get this 500 error down here.
Yep.
And this stays forever.
Can we look at the form, please? And do you
Yep.
have any hidden fields?
Well, let's take a look. So here's the form itself. This is hidden.
Mhm.
This is hidden. Okay. The others are not. None of these are required fields. This has a validator on it, which is, oh, excuse me, that is required. So the first and last are required, and I'm pretty sure the email is required, and it's, so, pretty basic stuff.
Sure. What's the other one? What's the validator there?
Yep, the validator is just that it's a valid phone number.
So let's take that off, just for
Take
fun.
the validation off?
Yep.
Okay,
For that one.
just for that
I mean,
one.
it's indicating it's a problem with validator, right?
With this 500 error?
Well,
It-
I'm sorry, you're turning on validation, and that's when you start seeing issues.
Yes,
So
that is correct.
from a play with it perspective, if we turn off validators, and that's the only one that I see that's uncommon, the rest of them were just required, right?
Well, let's just confirm. No, email is
I
the
think
both the
email
type.
you have in there.
Yeah. Okay, and I'll shut that off. I'll shut them all off, and I guess one of my larger questions is why does it come up with a 500 error? That to me,
Yep.
there's typically no errors in the console when I do this, or excuse me, in the log when I do this. Okay, so that's all pretty clean, right?
Right.
And let's just see what the diagnostic setting is. Do you want me to leave this on or off?
On, please.
Okay. So we save this.
So getting back to your question about 500 error, why it shows up that way, when we learn what triggers it, maybe we'll have a clue about why that is. And then, I mean, it may be a bug. By the way, is this a current version of the product?
Not quite current. I'll tell you that answer in a second. Okay, so I've got validators on. I'm not going to touch anything.
Okay.
So
yeah, what can you tell me what version it is, and I'm going to look on there.
okay, just bear with me 1 second. Okay, I am on 124. Ben has his hand up.
Come on, Ben, if you know the answer, just jump in.
Well, I don't know if it's the answer, but it's just the first thing that pops in my head. 500 error, typically, if I'm not mistaken, is usually like a general internal server error.
Yeah, it's
Um,
basically like a page not found sort of thing.
Right. Lots of times when I see that, it relates to security permissions. Now, I know off the top of my head that there are subfolders that hold the validation rules for action forms. My curiosity is if the folder structure that contains those files do not have the appropriate permissions on them for the current IIS user to open up those files to read the configuration for those validation routines. And maybe that's why you're getting a 500, because when Action
Yeah.
Forms tries to open up those validation files, or at least the folder that contains them, if the user doesn't have permission to access that folder, it might be coming back with that error. I don't know.
Well,
That's just my first guess.
that's a good guess. I'm gonna get
And with that, maybe, do you have any other forms on this site that you're doing validations on versus a new site? I mean,
I'm sorry. Can you say that question again, please?
I was exploring what Ben was saying.
Yeah.
If you have any other form that does validation and is working, that would be a clue that maybe it's not the issue that he's raised. But
Well, no, I've got forms all over the place. That the default is validation and they are working. It appears to be a relatively new problem that's just started to appear, which, you know, may or may not link back to what Ben was saying. It's the thing that was, and Ben, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out and reapply permissions to this system. All right, now supposedly those permissions have been updated, and I'm not sure if this has I think this has validation on. Yeah, see, it's still still getting the 500 error. So,
all right, can I suggest a different thing?
absolutely.
What if we make the form visible and so it's not operating as a pop-up?
Yep.
Have you tried that yet?
Dang it. Nope, I have. Well, I probably have, but not in an orderly fashion. And so, Ben, kind of back to you, that what I did may or may not have been sufficient to adequately address the concern you raised. So I think we'll hold that one in reserve. Initially visible, Dale?
Yes, please.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Does it require some parameters be passed to it when it opens?
Very possibly. Query string. Yeah. All right. So yes, short answer, yes. So this value where? Yeah.
A user ID?
Yeah. Yes, it looks like query string user ID. Let me just see on the events. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, which could be added manually.
Let's see. Nothing like real time.
Oh, yeah.
Bear with me, I gotta find out the user ID that's valid.
User
Alright,
ID
I'll
is
put-
listed on your grid.
This
Yeah,
one
it's right
should
there.
do. Mm.
Well, can't you just do it in the URL? Just put user ID equal to.
That's not the URL for this though, question mark. Oh, you're a genius. All right, so now diagnostics.
So it is not
Video.
related to that. I would be happy to take a whack at this if you were to export the form definition and,
Yeah.
and either open a ticket and attach it or email it to me directly. I do not care which. I'll see if I can, if how it behaves on our systems.
Opening up
Okay.
that console post message right there, does it give you any additional information?
Well, I think it, well, you tell me, Ben.
Polyfill JS sounds like an odd place for an error.
So when you go this way, let me expand this some. So polyfill JS looks, I'm pretty sure. Let me go back here to the console, start over. Go there. This is where the error is occurring. And yeah, there's nothing that I can see that jumps out there.
So then my other thought is it's giving you a folder structure there: desktop modules, DNN Sharp, Action Grid, Client, Apps, Dist, Grid Views, Polyfill.
Mhm.
That, I mean, can you try checking that folder first off? Make sure that polyfills.js exists in that folder for starters.
Yep. Bear with me. I'm on the server. Take a look. So this is
Oh, yeah, I think it does because you see a call stack there where it's done 6 or however many different things in
I mean,
Polyfill.
the only other thing I could think of is that's maybe, I don't know which directory structure you were looking at the permissions of. The only thing is, like you said, if you're getting this to work in other forms, then I would not think permissions is the issue.
right. All right. Surveys, grow strong leaders, desktop modules, DNN Sharp. Okay. DNN Sharp, Action Grid Client. Dist Grid. Polyfills JS is there. Okay. So Dale, I don't necessarily want to take.
Do that. I'd be happy to take a whack at it and spend some time on it.
Yeah, I will do that. Okay.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate the insight and your assistance.
Absolutely. I'm stealing the screen share back.
Go ahead.
Anyone else have something you want to cover first? As always, I have a couple of topics in my back pocket, but
I actually have a few things, but if we could start with a couple of short questions. The first one is, what's the token for, I have a date field, and when I just throw that into static text to show it, it shows as like 01/01/2024. I would like it to say Monday, comma, January space 1, comma, 2024. What's the token syntax for that? And where would I find that? I looked in the tokens, didn't see that particular example.
Let's see. Oddly enough, it's in the documentation, Don.
Got it. Wonderful.
And I know it's a little surprising because not everything is in the documentation, but this format will get you there.
That's exactly it. Great. Thank you. Now, I looked at the token documentation in the configuration screen and didn't think to jump over to documentation. I'll do that next time. Okay, cool. Second question. When you have a form that the public needs to create, typically you need to have a DNN user logged in to create it. So you do a load user, right? Is there any guidelines as to what user? Can it be any user? Is there an issue there that somehow or other things could break, and now that public person is has access to stuff? Does it matter? Do you have to have, should you have a user that's like geared towards just the permissions that you need to get that the token saved, the record saved?
So you can easily demonstrate that load user lasts for the duration of the action stack in an action form. So for example, if you were to do a load user and do the thing that you want, you'll notice that when it's over with, you're still a logged out user. So you can easily prove to yourself that you're not giving them permissions beyond the action stack. The load user action accepts a variety of things: a user number, a user ID, excuse me, a user name. And you can create one specifically for the purpose, which I think Patrick has mentioned in the past that he often does. So you could create a user called unauthenticated user or form user or something like that that only belongs to the certain roles that you care about, that entity needs, that entity has that role as giving permission. So you can assign minimum permissions. I don't know if I explained that well, but if you have questions, take a look at it. But create a user, give them minimum permissions, and then use that user.
Yes, you can do that, and I get that. I'm just wondering if is that best practice? Is there a situation where a stack gets stopped somehow but left in the wrong state, or is it pretty good cleanup to not ever worry about that? I typically just use my username, but again, I'm a super user, and it makes it really, trivially convenient. Just type in my username in the load user to continue on. But if I should be doing something different, I'd like to do that.
So I think from a best practice, it is a good idea to create a different user for it, if only from the tracking standpoint. When you get to looking, if you were to look at records created by that or modified by that, it's going to say form user instead of super user. So it distinguishes it from you. And another practice that I use is to typically to create a constant token that is the one that I use for load user actions. So instead of pointing it particularly to a user number 1 or 17 or something like that, point it to my a token. So you're doing it by name, and then that will allow you, if you transport that solution or code to another system, you can just create a different user and put it in that token as a constant definition.
Got it. That makes a lot of sense, especially if you're going to transfer it over to something else. I'm trying to do that. I have a Sprocket stage site where I do some playing around with it, similar to what you guys have. You can build an app environment, whatever. Okay, great, thanks. Third one is this might be one of the ones that you have in the back pocket, because the cafe did a talk on some basic fields that you create, one of which was a checkbox of lists. And I had a question that we right at the very end that we had a tiny bit of time on. But the question, the follow-up question is, what can you programmatically do with that list? I have a solution, a situation right now where I have a vote by mail system for a government site that they would like to fill out an application. And on the application, they'd like to know that if you do get a vote by mail, what party do you want in a primary? So you have to choose from, a list. And so that would have been a simple thing to do. What I did is a little different, but because I didn't know exactly how to use it, but I'd like to be able to use that list that's created. How do you split up that list? If it were, A, comma, B, comma, C that you save, how do you get at that?
Yep. So you can see my screen.
Yep.
It was one of the things I took your question, made a contribution for it. So it's a Campfire contribution, and you can look at it. What I've done is I've done a checkbox list of users. And so just talking about functionality, it's Andrew is user 18 and Craig is user 5. If I click this button, it retrieves the name, the main token for this users list and puts it here. In the same way, if you change this and use set values, it just pushes these values back into this list. So it kind of demonstrates you can get values out of it and you can push values into it. So if you, for example, if you saved this 1854 in a database and then you come back to edit this particular set of things, like if this were a set of preferences, for example, when you push that list back into here, these automatically show up as checked. So that's kind of the basic functionality working with checkbox list. And then if you want to process them as rows, if you want to do something with the data, there's an example here that does that. So what it's doing is it's splitting this into rows using a SQL statement, and then you can iterate over that. It's creating a list and then iterating over the list. So taking a quick look at the design of this, so we have a users, which is the name of this this list, the ID of the checkbox list. We have values, which is just a simple text box, and a display field, which is static text. So the get values button that retrieves that simply takes the user's token and stuffs it into values. And then using the AJAX, it updates the form. So very simply, how do you get data out of it? If you want to, the set values button, very similar, actually the reverse. It just takes the values and stuffs it into users. So showing that you can initialize it either in code or you could just use the initial value. But the main question that you're asking, how do you process that? What I'm doing is, in this case, I'm using create list from SQL, and the SQL is saying select the value, which comes from values. So I'm putting the value, putting the value, the users using the name values into here. So the string split function is going to give us different rows for a list of things. And so now you have a list of users, which I call users list, that you can iterate over like any other list that gets created. That's the long answer. The short answer is split string is a function,
Yeah, exactly.
that you can
Cool.
pass it a list of a delimited list. In this case, it's a comma delimited list, and it will split those onto different rows.
And then the next action that you do in this after that is the execute. Okay.
For each list entry, I'm processing the users list, and I am just adding the users list user ID onto the display. So display equals the previous display plus the list plus a HTML break. So just whatever users are picked are getting added to the end, and then again an HX when I'm all done to update the screen.
Got it. Wonderful.
So hopefully, I mean, that just kind of, it's a nonsense application, but it shows it in all directions, getting values
Yeah,
out,
yeah, exactly.
values into it, and how you process it.
Perfect.
Anyone?
This is
Thank
Mark.
you.
Can I add a little bit to this conversation?
Hello, sir.
Hello. Say in a vastly inferior product that I have also used, they had a cool thing in this one circumstance where, like, the radio boxes or the checkbox list could return more than just the 2 columns. So you could return as many columns as you needed. And if that were the case here in Plant and App, then a person could just refer to those additional columns instead of having to go look up that additional information.
Sounds like
I submitted that as a feature request. It's quite a while ago, like a couple of years probably, but it would be a really cool feature. It would be a lot less back and forth and return trips to do that.
Yes, and so actually pointing that does point out a really great question. And let me see if I can. I am doing a checkbox list, and this is there's different values that come off the checkbox list that you can look at, and I'm the one that I'm using is the simple one where you're just saying the field name. There is field name text and field name value and field name JSON array, which I think it would be interesting to display those things. So I'm going to add, first of all, I'm going to grab these syntaxes just so we can have them here to copy and paste. But we'll add a show values button, which will have an error. I'm just going to do it quick and dirty here, display an error message. The error message that I want to display looks something like users text. And I'm going to get out of this. Ugh, that's ugly. Trying to keep it a little simpler here. So this is users text. Value based on array. And I'm going to clean this up a little bit. So we say that equals that. All right, so we'll see what other things are stored in there. This is indirect to Mark's question. There's more stuff in this array. It's not the stuff that he wishes would be there, and I didn't do an Ajax, so it's not. Oh, there it is. So interesting. Text is empty, value is empty, and the JSON array has it as a ready to go. So the thing that I did where I used the SQL to split it up, you could instead just pass the JSON array. Create list from JSON and pass this JSON array, and you could skip the step of having to figure out what the SQL is to extract it. But to Mark's point, if we were to take all of the content that's in that SQL statement and put it into a JSON array, you could do whatever you want with it, including grab other values besides text and value. So interesting idea. But the limitation now is you just get either the text, if that's all you provided, or you get the value back if that's what, if you've provided a value, and then you can use the value to retrieve the information.
So, Don, I tried something, I'm sorry, Dale, I tried something similar to that a little while ago, where I returned as many columns as I needed in a JSON array. And then in the onBind, after a user made a choice, I would run a little procedure that would split that up into the columns that I needed and put it in the places on the form where it needed to go. But I had a problem with timing, in that the JavaScript where I split that information that got returned needed to happen after the data was returned, and it took a variable amount of time to get that data, depending on how complicated the query was. And sometimes that depended on what data the user chose to go look up. So I guess that long answer to say that I found it to be difficult to get it right, because sometimes my process for splitting up the columns would work, and other times it ran before the data was returned. Could just be the way I was doing it.
So looking from the chat, and I see Don asks a question and Ben answered, and I guess I don't understand the question. DNN functions for SQL. What is the?
I'm happy to try to answer, but the string split that you used in the SQL statement, and I've run into this with other SQL functions, that some SQL has it and some SQL doesn't. And then Ben was mentioning that DNN has some SQL functions that are declared in the DNN instance, and it's always there. So go ahead and use that instead, which is cool. Didn't think of that. So that's what's happening. We were talking about a variation on the thing that you put in the action you had in there, which was the SQL call to do a string split.
Yep. Okay.
And I'm going to ask in the Discord DNN community if there's a list of those, because I had never heard that there's such a thing. That's kind of cool. And it could very well help other times where you need to have a particular function. I just was reading somewhere that says, if you're going to learn something, the first thing to do is you got to learn the language. If you don't understand the language, you're going to get stuck. So knowing where the words are stored, where's the dictionary, is very helpful.
Well, Don, just on a side note, again, I don't know if they have it like nicely packaged as documentation, but if you want to know what functions are available to you, what you could do is, if you have access to the SQL Server, you could just always open up the database, go to programming functions, and in there it's going to show you all the functions on that database. and you'll see the one that I mentioned. So if you go to table value functions, in there, you're going to see where it says convert list to table. So that's one that's created for you. Again, there's a whole bunch of other ones there. You could see, what's in there. And then the scalar value functions, those are the ones that are going to return just single values. So those are things that are just going to return either like an integer or a string or something like that. The table value functions will return an actual table.
Oh yeah.
But those are the ones that are all built in. So, you see right there, like get SQL version and, things like that. So if you're looking for certain things like that, you can just reutilize what DNN has already created that they use for their own system and just repurpose it for yourself.
And of course, with these, you can see what's behind them, which is nice. You can copy them. So part of kind of a caveat with that is that when you're using their stuff, so long as they don't change it, and it probably won't change, but you're using something that is subject to, what it could be different in in the next version of DNN if they decided to change something. Again, it's probably pretty stable, this particular one pretty stable, but just want to point that out. Another thing that you can do is install your own functions right into SQL. So if you were to make a copy of one and want it to be slightly different, I've done that before, or just found one on the internet that I really liked to get something done. You can install it in your SQL and then call it from a SQL statement.
Got it.
Yeah, I'll just give you a heads up. That particular one that I showed you, I did that very same thing. I copied it and modified it because there was, I'm not going to say a bug, but there is a limitation to it, and that is the size of the data that you can send to it. It's not like, for example, max character string. There is a limit. I think it's like 1,000 or something like that. And I came across a situation where I needed it to be larger. So I went and I just created my own and made it a varchar max instead. So I use my own, but I just happen to know that that one is there. But yeah, like Dale said, I've done that more times than I can count in creating my own stored procedures. So I know they're in, all my installations and just use it that way.
Got it.
I think I've mentioned, whoops, I apologize for not being able to drag a screen around well here. I think I've mentioned this before, but there's one that I use pretty frequently that's called search all tables. And now I got to figure out, oh, that's a stored procedure that I again found a long time ago on the internet. And let me find it here. Search all tables, and what it does is it goes through every table, every column, looking for the thing you're looking for. So I use this when I have a known value and I'm trying to figure out what table that known value might be in, so I can go find it and fix it. Sometimes I'm doing research and I'll just use I'll if I want to figure out where where Plantain app is storing something, if I set it in a configuration parameter, maybe I'll add the comment of one of my favorite unique strings and then go search for that. And now I can see where Plantain app stored it. So it's just a quick way to go find things. So search all tables is a neat function that let's see. This will probably tell me where I found it. I think it has a comment about it. Yep, and I'm not even sure this site exists anymore, but I found it on the internet and just installed it, and it's very, very handy. Anybody ever needs that, I'd be happy to share.
Wow. All righty. Evotiva has a DNN-based search and replace function that it's a freebie that I don't know how old it is exactly. I've used it. In fact, I just used it recently, and it will do a search and replace, but of certain of the tables. And it's great if you've got something that you're putting into all of your HTML modules to go ahead and be able to do a one-time switch.
So I'm moving on to a different topic. I just wanted to tell you one of the things of where we're going, which is execute actions will eventually have an on error section where we've talked about this before, that sometimes you want to capture errors that are happening in a particular action and do something with it. Some of our actions have it, some of them don't. And so it made sense to us as the quickest possible way to get this out to you to add an on error section to the execute actions action, because you can put anything inside of an execute actions. So if you need something error trapped and you want to catch the error and do something with it, this is going to give you a way to do that. So that's kind of a preview of coming attractions. So that's my mention for today. Someone else, something else.
I have a question, Dale. I remember a while back, but I don't remember when or who. Someone said that they had created a custom action, like an if else.
Yes, David Osborne did that.
Do you know if he shared that action anywhere?
I don't recall, but
Because I use that type of logic quite often in action stacks, and I just find like it would be easier and more cohesive to see something in one action where you have an if block and an else block, as opposed to having one block of actions with a condition and a second block of actions with a condition.
with a negative condition, perhaps. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And then you can, since you can nest those, you can drill down. I would be happy to link you and David up on that.
I'd appreciate it. Thanks.
I just did a thing where the client is responsible for what message gets put in front of the form, depending on the date. So again, it's part of that vote by mail system where if it's not time yet to take applications, they want a message. If it is time to take them, they want a message. And if it's beyond time to take them, they want a message. So I've got 3 create update tokens that says the message is, and then the condition is a date condition. And that would be a perfect case action, I would think, some of the if then thing, to be able to say, case this, case that, etc.
Absolutely. All right, I think we're on to last call. We have 5 minutes, but okay. Well, if no one else wants to jump in, then I will just close us out. We will adjourn in a moment to our Afterglow segment, but I want to thank you for attending this one, and we look forward to hosting another one of these next week. Thank you all.